My name is Lucy. I'm 32 years old and live in Washington State, working as a senior financial manager at an insurance company. For the past 3 years, I've cut my personal spending to the bare minimum. I didn't buy new clothes, didn't go on vacation, didn't eat out, and lived in a studio apartment barely bigger than a garage. All for one dream: to own a lakeside cabin. I found it on an April morning, with mist still rising over Lake Chelan like a thin silver veil. The oak cabin sat nestled in a pine forest, facing the water, its charcoal-colored roof glowing under the early sunlight. I stood on the porch, took a deep breath, and knew this place was mine. I didn't buy the cabin just for myself. I imagined summer nights around a campfire, the whole family roasting marshmallows, chilly Christmas mornings by the fireplace, long holidays where my parents, younger brother, and sister-in-law would leave the city behind and rediscover the connection that had been smothered by work, stress, and distance. And I believed somehow that this place could make that happen. I placed a deposit that same week, and after 2 months of wrestling with paperwork, the cabin was officially under my name. I'd paid 40% up front. The rest was a 15-year mortgage. I'd never signed anything that made my hands shake so much, but my heart was pounding from excitement, not fear. During the first week after I moved in the essentials, I invited the whole family to spend the weekend. My mother, Denise, age 60, a retired teacher, stepped inside and gasped softly. "Oh my God, Lucy, you really did it." She gently ran her fingers along the wooden railing, her eyes lifting to the tall ceiling and the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the lake. "This place is like a dream." My father, Robert, age 64, a former military officer, just nodded, holding his usual black coffee. He was never the expressive type, but I caught a moment where he stood quietly on the deck, gazing out at the mirror-like lake. My younger brother, Josh, 28, a digital content creator, bounded up the wooden stairs like an excited 8-year-old. "OMG, Lucy, this place is absolutely perfect on camera. Natural lighting, forest backdrop, lake view. This is gonna be the best vlog setup ever." I smiled. In my mind, I could already see the family playing board games by the fire, grilling BBQ on the deck as the sunset painted the water red. This cabin wasn't just property. It was a chance. A chance to heal the cracks in our relationships that time had worn thin. My mom touched my shoulder, her eyes glistening. "But how did you afford this? This place can't be cheap." Every bonus over 3 years, every overtime shift each quarter, no spending beyond essentials. I planned everything down to the dollar. I couldn't hide the pride as I looked around the space I had built. Every wooden beam, every floor tile was the result of sleepless nights and grinding hours at the office. She nodded, though her eyes flickered with something unreadable. My dad said nothing, sipping his coffee as he stepped back out onto the deck, as if avoiding the emotional moment. Josh had already pulled out his camera, filming a test clip for TikTok, calling it our new slice of paradise. I sat down on the armchair near the fireplace, closed my eyes, and breathed in deeply. What I felt was a mixture of relief and hope. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally reached a dream I had chased my entire adult life. A part of me believed that from this point on, everything would change, and I was ready to begin again, with my family beside me. At the end of June, I decided to return to the cabin after 2 intense weeks, buried in a quarterly finance project. The moment I arrived, something felt off. Out on the porch were 2 brand new wicker chairs I had never purchased, along with a doormat that read, "Welcome to the lake vibe," definitely not my style. The back door was unlocked, and the hardwood floor still showed streaks of wet footprints. I stepped inside with a sinking feeling. The kitchen was unusually tidy. The fridge was stocked with organic groceries and a few bottles of detox water labeled Kayla. I froze in place when I saw a new photo frame on the fireplace mantel. A picture of my mother, Denise, grinning alongside Josh and an unfamiliar blonde woman, all standing in front of the cabin. The caption read, "The Wagner family at Lake Chelan. A warm start to summer." I called my mother right then. She answered after a few rings, sounding cheerful. "Oh, hi, sweetheart. I guess you've made it up to the cabin." "Mom, who's been using my house? Someone redecorated, stocked the fridge, placed family photos? It's clear they've been living here all week." "Oh, that was just me and Josh. And his new girlfriend, Kayla. She's adorable. I had a key, remember?" I thought, well, it's kind of the whole family's place, right? I swallowed hard before replying. "Mom, this property is under my name. I pay the mortgage every month. You need to ask before coming here." "Don't overreact. We're family. I just thought we should make use of it instead of leaving it empty." I clenched the phone tighter. "Next time, please ask." All right, I get it," she said. But there wasn't the slightest trace of remorse in her voice. The following week, I stumbled upon a video Kayla posted on Instagram. She was live streaming from the master bedroom in my cabin, using the hashtag #LakeHouseDiaries, showing off her chill morning vibes at my boyfriend's private retreat. I nearly threw my phone across the room. But it didn't stop there. In early July, I got an email from a construction contractor, confirming a deposit of $3,200 on behalf of Mrs. Denise Wagner, for approved front exterior renovations to the cabin. I almost blacked out. I called my mother, and this time, my voice wasn't calm. "What are you doing? Why are you hiring contractors to alter the front of the cabin without asking me?" "Lucy, relax. The front looks too outdated. Guests might think you're being cheap. I just wanted to help upgrade the place." "By using your name to authorize changes to my house?" "I'm doing this for the family. Don't act like some selfish little girl." I was speechless. For years, I had been the quiet child. Never a burden, never a complaint. Always the adult in every argument. But this time? I'd had enough. When I told her to cancel the project, she snapped. "You should be grateful I even care about that house. You live in Seattle all day, letting the cabin sit empty is a waste." Later, my dad Robert sent me a single message: "Don't upset your mother." No questions asked, no effort to understand. That was it. At the end of the month, I drove up to the cabin unannounced. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were string lights and a small stage set up in the backyard. Kayla was filming a TikTok with a group of strangers. She saw me and offered a sheepish smile. "Oh, hey, Lucy. We didn't think you were coming today. Josh said you were busy?" "Josh said?" I stepped up onto the porch. "This is my house. No one has the right to turn it into their personal studio." Kayla rolled her eyes and looked toward the interior. "Maybe you should talk to your mom. Everyone thinks this is sort of the home base for the family project." I felt like someone had torn straight through the vision I had built around this cabin. What was meant to be a place for bonding had been turned into a tool for fake status. A space where every decision was made by people who hadn't contributed a single cent. I walked inside. The hardwood floor was scratched. The sofa I had bought was stained with red wine. My home office had been transformed into a podcast recording corner, complete with a mic and LED lights. Josh wasn't there, but he left a note on the fridge. "Don't be mad. Got a big shoot next week. Love ya." I shut the door. Standing there, in what used to be my dream come true, I realized one thing. I'd been too soft. And maybe it was time to stop being soft. One Friday afternoon at the end of July, I decided to drive up to the cabin without warning. That entire week I hadn't been able to sleep. The thought of strangers walking through my bedroom, opening my fridge, sitting on the sofa I paid for, made my stomach twist. I arrived just before 6 p.m. The sun was still out, but the atmosphere around the cabin felt unusually chaotic. 2 SUVs were parked along the curb, completely blocking the entrance. I recognized one as Josh's. The other was unfamiliar. EDM music was thumping from the backyard, mixed with loud laughter and voices. I stepped onto the front steps, pulled out my key, and tried the lock like I always did. But this time, the key didn't fit. I tried again. Nothing. The lock had been changed. My heart started pounding. I checked the side door. Also locked. The back door had a newly installed electronic keypad, blinking cold blue when I touched it. I stood frozen, fists clenched white. They had really changed the locks. I called my mother. No answer. I called Josh. Nothing. I tried Kayla. Her phone was off. Finally, I called my mom again. She picked up after 3 rings, her voice mingled with thumping music. Lucy, what's going on? I'm a little busy. Did you change the locks at the cabin? I asked directly, trying to keep calm. Oh, yeah, the old one jammed. Josh had someone fix it. Is that a problem? A problem? I nearly hissed through my teeth. You're in my house, throwing a party, changed the locks without telling me, and you're asking if that's a problem? Lucy. Don't be dramatic. Tonight's Josh and Kayla's launch party. All their media partners are here. You're always too busy to use the cabin anyway. I figured you didn't care. I looked up at the sky, trying to steady myself. I bought this cabin for family, not for you to hijack and turn into a performance stage. Don't say it like that. Sounds so harsh, she cut in. We'll talk later, all right? I really need to get back to the guests. I hope you understand. The call ended abruptly. I stood there, in front of my own front door, surrounded by the noise of people who had no idea, or simply didn't care, that they were partying on someone else's property. I turned to head back to my car and froze when I noticed an older woman watching me from the porch next door. She wore a cardigan, held a teacup, and looked at me with genuine concern. I nodded politely and started to walk away when she spoke. You're Lucy, right? I stopped. Yes, and you are? I'm Evelyn. I've lived next door for over 30 years. I've seen you around before. You're the new owner of that cabin, aren't you? I nodded, bitterness welling up in my chest. Yes. Though right now, I'm not sure if I even count as the owner anymore. Evelyn stepped down a few stairs, her voice lowering. They've been throwing parties every week. New people show up every couple of days. I asked Kayla once, and she told me the cabin was a family co-investment and was being developed into a content production site. It didn't sit right with me, and seeing you now, I knew something wasn't adding up. I took a deep breath. Would you be willing to document what you've seen? Anything, even small details, would help. Absolutely. And I have security cameras. They record the driveway and part of the backyard. If you need footage, I can pull it. I squeezed her hand gently. I really appreciate that. As I turned to leave, a flashy sports car pulled up. A group of young people in loud outfits jumped out, carrying a Bluetooth speaker and a few cases of beer. One of them shouted toward the house. Party time, baby! Kayla said just use the back door. The door opened, music blasting louder. Through the glass I saw my mother, laughing with a silver-haired man in a silk shirt. Josh was live streaming, filming the crowd by the fireplace, the same fireplace I once pictured our family gathered around for game night. I didn't walk up to knock. Instead, I pulled out my phone. My hand trembled slightly, not out of fear but because, for the first time, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I called my lawyer. And this time I wasn't asking for advice. I was giving instructions. The next morning, I returned to Evelyn's house with a notebook and a portable hard drive in my bag. She opened the door and welcomed me into her living room, filled with sunlight and the scent of chamomile tea. Her computer was already on, the screen displaying frame-by-frame footage pulled from the security camera mounted on her porch. She didn't say much, just quietly clicked through each segment, noting timestamps like someone who'd done this more times than she should have, had to. Here, she pointed to footage from July 5th. They showed up at 9:17 a.m. A truck dropped off construction materials. Your mother was giving directions, and that Josh boy was signing papers with the contractors. I watched it clearly. My mother's neatly tied gray hair, clipboard in hand, constantly on the phone. A few seconds later, Evelyn fast forward. July 10th, evening party. Guests started arriving around 4 p.m. and the last car pulled out just before midnight. I counted at least 26 people going in and out. I pulled out my pen and scribbled the details into my notebook. Could you send me all footage with them on it? Ideally from mid-June until now. Of course. She plugged the hard drive in and began transferring files. I just think it's so wrong, what they're doing to you. You bought this cabin, poured your hopes into it, and they trampled all over it. That's cruel. I nodded. Thank you, this means more than you know. On my way back, I stopped by a small coffee shop in the center of town. I opened my laptop and created a folder named Evidence, Wagner Cabin. Alongside the video footage from Evelyn's cameras, I started collecting everything else I could use. Screenshots of Kayla's Instagram posts, TikToks Josh recorded in my living room, and live streams of my mother presenting the cabin as our family's shared lakeside retreat. I replayed one clip from Josh's video. Welcome to Wagner Retreat. This is our family lake house, where we gather, create content, relax, and invest in dreams. Next to him, my mother beamed and raised a wine glass. Every corner here bears our family's mark. Every detail, from design to renovation, was planned together. I paused the video. Their mark? They hadn't spent a single dollar on this place. I opened my banking app and downloaded the entire mortgage history. 3 years of saving, 6 months of payments. All me. Not once had any of them sent a single transfer. That night, I called an old acquaintance. Brandon Keller, a civil attorney who once represented me in a labor dispute with my former employer. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Brandon? I need a full legal response prepared for unlawful occupation, fraudulent property claims, and if possible, trespassing. He was silent for a moment. Lucy? This is the cabin you once said you bought to bring your family together, right? Yes. But they changed the locks, held commercial events there, and repeatedly claimed the cabin was shared property. I've got footage, images, a witness, and financial records. I want to handle this the right way. But I'm not playing nice anymore. I understand. Send me everything tonight. I'll review and build a plan. I'll need the deed, mortgage statements, and every piece of evidence you've gathered. The more the better. I sent it all before midnight, Brandon replied quickly. This is solid enough to file for emergency eviction or take them to court. But Lucy, I need to ask. How far are you willing to go? I stared at the screen, thinking about my mother, toasting on camera, Josh, filming from what used to be my workspace, Kayla referring to the cabin as her brand sanctuary. I thought about the cold beep of the digital lock on a door that used to be mine. I typed slowly. I want back what's mine. And I want them to never forget it. The next day, Brandon sent me a 3-phase plan. File an unlawful occupancy claim, issue a formal legal notice to my family about property violations, and, in parallel, prepare for a potential sale of the cabin to cut myself free from their toxic control, once and for all. At the bottom of his email was one line that hit like a switch. If you're ready, we can coordinate with law enforcement to repossess the property while they're still inside. The only question left is, are you ready? I closed the laptop. The sunset cast a golden glow across the printed documents I had spread out. The answer couldn't have been clearer. I was ready. On Monday morning, I received a call from the bank. The representative, calm but clearly tense, enunciated every word carefully. We're calling to confirm that Miss Lucy Wagner is authorizing the transfer of property at 42 Shorepine Lane into an entity called Wagner Living Group, LLC, registered under Ms. Denise Wagner. Is that correct? I barely heard the rest. My ears rang. My hand gripped the phone so tightly it hurt, and I fought to stay composed instead of screaming. No, I have never signed any documents related to that. The cabin is in my name, individually. No third party has power of attorney. The representative cleared his throat. Thank you for confirming. We'll place an immediate hold on the transfer request. And, just so you're aware, a complete file was submitted, including a digital signature under your name and a copy of your ID. We suspect possible forgery. I hung up with my heart pounding. There was no doubt in my mind who was behind this. 10 minutes later, I was at Brandon's office, dropping a flash drive with the bank files onto his desk. They're not just occupying my house, I said, voice sharp. They're trying to steal it legally by forging my signature. Brandon opened his laptop and pulled up the files. On the screen was the contract. Transferor, Lucy Wagner. Transferee, Wagner Living Group LLC. Represented by Denise Wagner. It even included a scanned copy of my driver's license, and the signature looked uncannily like mine. This signature was pasted in. There's no digital signature log, Brandon concluded. This was photoshopped. I inhaled deeply. So they used my name to transfer the property and then used it as collateral for that fake business? Lake House Studios? Most likely, they're trying to secure a loan using the cabin as leverage, but submitting forged documents, that's criminal. How far do you want to take this? I want them to admit what they've done, and I want legal proof. That afternoon, I emailed my mother with a subject line that read simply, "Request for explanation, Lake Chelan Cabin." The message was one sentence long. I have a copy of the illegal transfer documents. We need to talk, now, no intermediaries. Less than 2 hours later, I got a call. It was my father, Robert. His voice was hoarse and low. "Lucy, what are you doing? Your mother's been crying all afternoon." "Good. Maybe now she knows a fraction of what I've been feeling," I said coldly. "Did you know she forged my signature to transfer the cabin into an LLC?" He paused for several seconds. "That's a misunderstanding. It was a temporary process to release investment funds. Everything would have gone back to normal. There's nothing temporary about identity theft and mortgaging my home behind my back." My voice was razor sharp. "This isn't a family matter, this is fraud. Lucy, everything you have, you owe to this family. Who paid your college tuition? Who bought your first car? And now that it's time to give back, this is what you do?" I laughed dryly. "I paid off my tuition through student loans. That old Honda? You made me work warehouse shifts every summer to cover it. If you're going to rewrite history, at least remember, I've got a good memory. You're going to regret this, Lucy. You're destroying everything." "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I'm stopping you all from destroying what I built, with my sweat, and every single dollar I earned." I hung up. My heart raced, but my mind had never been clearer. That night, Brandon sent me a draft of the civil complaint and a cease and desist order against Wagner Living Group LLC. He also included a formal request to initiate an investigation into document forgery and financial fraud. I signed it without hesitation. That night, I sat in the living room of my Seattle apartment, watching highway lights flicker on the window glass. I didn't picture family dinners by the cabin fireplace anymore. All that remained was the truth, and I was ready to use it as a weapon. Brendan advised me, "If we want to win in court, Lucy, legal documents alone won't be enough. We need to show real consequences. If you can get evidence of them using the cabin illegally as a business, possibly breaking the law, the court won't side with them." I nodded. A plan had already begun to form in my mind. Clear, calculated, and chilling in its precision. The next day, I contacted a private security firm in Spokane. They specialized in installing discrete surveillance systems linked directly to the owner's phone. I didn't want to forcibly break into the property, so I chose a subtle approach. I hired a technician, posing as an HVAC repairman to access the cabin without raising suspicion. Evelyn helped coordinate the perfect time, Wednesday afternoon, when Josh and Kayla were typically out filming, and my mother only visited on weekends. 4 micro cameras were installed in under 2 hours. One in the living room, one in the hallway near the bedrooms, one in the kitchen, and one overlooking the backyard where most of the parties were held. The setup was so discreet that no one would notice unless they were specifically looking. I installed the app on my phone. Every motion would now trigger a real-time notification. 3 days later, the first alert came in at 9:12 p.m. on Saturday. I was sitting in my home office when the screen lit up with an image of Kayla in a glittery dress, directing a group of friends as they set up tables for a party. Josh was dragging speakers out into the yard. My mother was also there, wearing a long evening gown, clinking glasses with a sharply dressed man. I turned on the sound. "This is the official launch of Lake House Collective," Kayla beamed at the livestream camera. "We're transforming this space into a creative retreat for content makers. Huge thanks to Mom Denise for allowing us to use this incredible venue." My mother smiled as if delivering a keynote speech. "Our family always supports the younger generation. This cabin is a hub for creativity and it's a shared asset. Lucy? Well, she's not really interested in this sort of thing." I closed my eyes for a moment. Not interested? What did they think I'd been doing the past 3 years? Working late nights, sacrificing every comfort to pay for every beam and window pane? When I opened them again, the footage had shifted. One girl was sprinkling what looked like white powder across the stone countertop. One of Josh's friends laughed loudly, pouring liquor into plastic cups. I snapped a screenshot and saved the video. That was the evidence. Not just of trespassing, but of potential drug use. That night, I didn't sleep. I re-watched every clip from the past 4 days. My mother giving strangers a house tour, presenting each room like it was hers, Josh signing contracts with a video production crew, Kayla hosting a virtual meeting, pitching the cabin as a high-renter investment property. I compiled everything into one folder and emailed it to Brandon. The subject line was simple: "They've gone too far." The next morning he called, a mix of shock and professional excitement in his voice. "Lucy, this is a gold mine. Not only does it prove unlawful occupation, but it shows clear evidence of illegally commercializing private property. We can file for immediate removal and begin the sale process." I straightened in my seat. "Sale process? You once told me this cabin was your dream. But at this point, holding on to it might just keep you tethered to them." I was quiet for a long while. In my mind, I saw myself standing on the porch that first morning, sunrise over the lake, hope swelling in my chest. Now, it was no longer a dream. It had become the scene of a sophisticated invasion. "Can you find trustworthy buyers?" I asked. "Yes, and if you approve, we'll list the cabin the same night they're planning to launch Lake House Collective." I didn't smile, I only nodded. "Do it." I opened the security app again. Kayla was rehearsing a speech in front of the mirror. Josh was testing lighting. My mother entered the room holding a thick folder. Probably a funding proposal based on their so-called family asset. I whispered to myself, eyes locked on the screen. It's time they learn what real ownership and truth actually look like. Saturday night, LED lights lined the walkway leading to the cabin. From the camera on my phone, I saw Kayla wearing a shimmering tiara, beaming in the center of a crowd. She raised a glass and streamed live on Instagram. "Welcome to the official launch of Lake House Collective. We're opening our new creative space at the family's lake house." Josh stood beside her in a silver gray suit, nodding like he was about to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. My mother was busy serving drinks to a group of middle-aged men, laughing and chatting as if they were investors. I was parked a block away, inside a rented SUV, alongside Brandon and Deputy Joseph Allen. He'd been fully briefed. Legal documents, civil orders, proof of property ownership, all in hand. Brandon glanced at his watch. 8:42, perfect timing, we're right on schedule for their big announcement. I nodded and opened the car door. I wore a simple black dress, hair pulled back low, and carried a thick file folder. No makeup, no jewelry. Just one thing: the truth. We walked straight to the front door. Inside, music pounded through the walls. Through the glass, I saw Josh standing in the living room with a microphone. And finally, thanks to my mom for always believing in me, and to my sister, even though she couldn't be here tonight, for helping in the early stages of the project. I pushed the door open just as the applause erupted. The music cut off. Over 40 heads turned toward me, then to Brandon and the deputy behind me. Josh froze. Kayla went wide-eyed. My mother turned pale and speechless. "Good evening," I said loud and clear. "I'm Lucy Wagner, the sole legal owner of this property, and this event, I'm sorry folks, is officially over." "Lucy!" My mother stepped forward, lowering her voice. "What are you doing? Don't make a scene in front of the guests." "Oh, you care about appearances now? What about my dignity, the one you've all trampled for months?" Josh stepped in, smiling nervously. "Sis, please don't ruin this, we're live streaming." I raised the folder high. "Good, let them all see it." I opened to the first page, the deed. "I bought this cabin with my own savings. No one here has any legal right to it." Brandon stepped up, presenting verification papers. "Under Washington State Civil Code, any unauthorized occupation and commercial use of private property is subject to immediate enforcement." Deputy Allen added, "Ownership has been confirmed. The property owner demands all activities cease and all attendees vacate immediately." Kayla turned pale but forced a smile. "This is a misunderstanding. She said the cabin was for family." "I said it was to bring the family together, not for you to impersonate ownership, throw parties, shoot content, and forge a transfer to a fake LLC." I opened my phone and played surveillance footage of Kayla sprinkling white powder on my kitchen counter. The room fell silent. "I've submitted everything to my lawyer, including copies of the forged transfer paperwork my mother sent to the bank. I can present all of this to a judge tomorrow." One man in the crowd whispered, "She's saying Denise forged documents?" "Exactly," I said. "And here's one more thing you all should know." I turned to Kayla. "This house has been sold, the transaction finalized this morning. Tonight is your farewell party. Everyone needs to leave." Kayla staggered backward. Josh barked, "You can't do this." "Josh," I said, locking eyes with him. "I already did." My mother's voice cracked. "Lucy, you'll destroy everything just because you're angry? This isn't anger. It's justice." I turned to the deputy. "Proceed." One by one, guests were escorted out. Some filmed the scene, others whispered in disbelief. Kayla fumed. Josh stood speechless. My mother, for the first time, had nothing left to say. I stepped onto the porch as wind swept across the lake. Behind me was the house that once held my dreams. Soon, it would belong to someone else. Brandon stepped beside me and murmured, "They'll never forget this night." I nodded, eyes forward. "And I'll never have to remember them again." 3 days after the eviction, the lake cabin no longer held a trace of the people who once invaded it. The professional cleaning crew Brandon had hired had scrubbed away the wine stains, replaced the rugs, and repaired the cracks on the stone countertop. I stood in the living room, taking one last look around. Everything was back in order. Clean, still, silent. No more shrill live stream voices, no more clinking glasses, no more hollow laughter. The new owners would arrive the next morning, a young couple from Spokane with 2 little kids. They planned to turn the cabin into a weekend getaway. No social media, no streaming. Just a quiet place to breathe. As I reviewed the closing documents, a new email from Brandon's office arrived. The subject line stopped me cold. "Legal records regarding the estate of Rose Martin, your grandmother." I froze. I had no idea Brendan had been looking into anything related to her. In the message he explained he had stumbled across a faint note in an old land record, while verifying the legitimacy of the sale. He'd asked an associate to trace the ownership history back before the year 2000. What he found made me sit down, stunned. The cabin I had scraped and saved for over 3 years to buy had once legally belonged to my grandmother, Rose, my mother Denise's biological mother. After Rose passed away, she left the cabin to me in a private will, one that had never gone through probate. When I was 16, my mother, as the property guardian, quietly sold it far below market value. The buyer? A real estate firm connected to an old colleague of my father's. Brandon's email concluded, "If you'd like, I can file a motion for investigation into estate abuse and civil fraud. There's also a potential case for financial restitution if the sale is found unlawful." I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I printed a copy of my grandmother's will and drove to the small cemetery on the west hill of town. I stood before the gravestone that read, Rose M. Martin, placed a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, and read her will aloud. To my granddaughter Lucy Wagner. I leave the cabin at Lake Chelan, the only place that ever made me feel whole. The wind picked up. My chest ached, both grief and peace settling in at once. I left the cemetery at sunset. On the drive back, my mother called. For the first time, I didn't decline the call only because I knew it would be the last. "Lucy," her voice was hoarse, "you can't just cut us off like this." "I'm not cutting anyone off, Mom. I'm choosing to stop being manipulated. You're making me lose everything. My reputation, my friends, my family. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by action. And you betrayed me. Not just once. I'm sorry." The cabin, the LLC, the loan. It was all for Josh. He needed a shot. And I expected too much from you. I let out a soft laugh. "No, you didn't expect too much. You just expected me to endure everything. You never once asked what I needed. You think selling the cabin means you've won? One day, Lucy, you'll need us. Maybe. But if that day comes, I'll go to someone who truly helps, not someone who sees me as a family asset." I hung up. Then I blocked her number. And Josh's. And Kayla's. I didn't need to hear excuses, sob stories, or empty promises to change. Anyone who wants forgiveness must first know remorse, and none of them had it. The next morning, I handed the keys to the young couple. They hugged me, tearfully grateful, while their kids ran giggling through the backyard. The older one looked up at me, curious. "Did you used to live here?" I smiled. "I did, and now it's your turn to make memories here." On the way back to Seattle, I didn't play music. I didn't overthink. I just drove, mile by mile, leaving behind not just a cabin, but an entire chapter of my life. A chapter filled with pressure, deception, and warped expectations from people who should have loved me unconditionally. I was no longer the Lucy who begged to be heard. I was the Lucy who wrote her own boundaries. And to me, that was the real inheritance my grandmother left behind. Lucy's story is a powerful reminder that sacrifice doesn't guarantee respect, and kindness should never be treated as obligation. When family crosses the line, standing up to protect your dignity and property isn't selfish, it's necessary. In real life, everyone has the right to say enough to manipulation, even when it comes from loved ones. Sometimes, letting go isn't giving up. It's the only way to reclaim peace and ownership over your life. What do you think about Lucy's choice? Would you have done the same in her situation? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.